Welcome back to another episode of the Made Live podcast, where we have curious conversations about what it means to live and walk the way of Jesus as we live in communion with God, in community with God's people, and committed to the cause of the kingdom. I'm Haley Gregory, and I'm one of your co-hosts. And for this series, I'm joined by one of my esteemed colleagues, Gloria Kim, and today I'm so excited for our guests. They are the members of our hospitality team, and so we're so excited to have them here today as we talk about some misconceptions and what it means to live a hospitable life. So I'm going to kick it over to Gloria.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Gloria. I have the privilege of serving our hospitality ministry with these beautiful women of team leads, and I'm very excited to hear their stories today. So yeah, I'm just gonna kick us off and would love to ask you to maybe share a little bit about yourself. How long have you been serving in our ministry, and also how has serving in hospitality ministry has shaped your walk with Jesus?
All right. My name is Gracie. I've been at LIFEGATE for 7 years now, and with the hospitality ministry since the start, when it was just me, Gloria, and Olivia, which was so fun. I think hospitality is so important because growing up, I never really felt like I was welcomed in a room, almost like I had to prove it. But then when I graduated high school, I realized like I can't control other people's actions nor how they perceive me. And so now when I enter a room, it's more about let's scan the room and let's not look for my friends, but let's look for that person that's alone, you know? And so that's really, I don't know, shaped my understanding of who we are as people and relating to one another, because I know what it feels like to not feel like you have a lot to offer or bring to the table, and how scary that can be to like admit that to a stranger. Yeah. You know, and that's what Jesus did. He found the lost sheep. He sat with the strangers, and that's the ministry we walk in, you know? And part of hospitality too is just learning to have grace, regardless of someone's history. And so like stepping into the hospitality ministry is just that. It's finding the people that are alone and, you know, calling them out and making them feel seen and needed.
Yes. Yeah, that's powerful. Hi, I am Alyssa Soto. I have been coming to LifeGate for about 3-ish years and serving for probably a little over 1. This ministry has just honestly transformed my life and my way of thinking. And I think that throughout the Bible, we see constant examples of like how Jesus was like the definition of hospitable, and how he sat with everyone and held conversations for all different types of people. And we just see the way that he was such a facilitator of like gathering. And I think that serving in this ministry and like listening to other people's stories and hearing them out has like helped me be able to walk closer in alignment with how Jesus walked, and be able to be a person who is opening the door for others and holding those spaces and conversations for others, and just making other people feel comfortable and welcomed.
Really great. I am Krystal Ruiz, and I have been coming to LifeGate for 7 years as well. I've been on the team, I want to say 2.5 years, maybe 3. So initially I joined because I love setting the table, the beauty of it. And I love decorating and I love all these things. So that was the reason why I joined. But throughout the years, I think this team has helped me shape of like what you were saying, like seeing the unseen, and also preparing the atmosphere, knowing that there's going to be people coming from all different walks of life, praying over this space, and then just being present. Like, I think that's huge with our home, how we just want to be sitting with people and just being present with them. And yeah, that's just a little tidbit there. I don't know.
Yeah, I apologize if you're watching this. You're watching us pass the mic back and forth. We had a mic snafu before all of this, so that's just the reality of podcasting. But I love that each one of you shared your story, and in your story there's uniqueness, but there's also cohesion, right? There's this cohesion of looking for the unseen, experiencing Jesus in that, but also you each have your own unique stories in that. And so how have you seen hospitality transform a relationship or open the door for deeper connection? And what happened there?
Yeah.
Whoever wants to go.
Do you guys? Okay.
I think that a lot of the time we look at hospitality as creating like a physical space. And while I think that you can definitely like use that to your advantage, I think you can have like a hospitable mindset too, of engaging in the deeper conversations, being hospitable with your time and your space, to go deeper with people. I think that the part of inviting people in can get you there, but then once you're in the door, okay, what am I going to do to take this deeper? And I think I've experienced like my connections here at LifeGate deepened by people inviting me in and creating a space for me to feel comfortable being vulnerable, comfortable being honest, and able to share my story. And so I think that not only opening the door, but opening your life is huge.
I think just to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, it does allow for deeper connections. And as if you're hosting, right, you kind of set that tone and how deep you want to go and be thoughtful of just the questions that you're asking around the table. Just really thought provoking, but also like, I want to know your story. So the ones that we have, like some of our closest friends are the ones that like the first time we met, we're just giving our testimony. We're giving like what God is teaching us in this moment. And I mean, you think about it and you're like, you just met this person. But that's just like Jesus. You have that common thing, right? And this common person that has brought you guys to the table. And it's just so beautiful to hear like everybody's different story and just how far like Jesus has brought us all.
I would also say it takes courage to step out and like talk to complete strangers. And some of my favorite memories from this team are like during Christmas, and we'll have like a hot cocoa bar and like helping some little old lady pour her hot cocoa and just like talking with her or complimenting some girl on her shoes and just calling people out by name when I see them next. I feel like that's huge. When you remember something about someone and they feel seen, like that means a lot to people. And so those like little details build relationships and make them last.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Krystal and Gracie, I think both what you just said was so profound, because I think, Krystal, as you were talking, I was thinking about my husband and I just had a conversation about that. Conversations that are fun for a bit, and then eventually there's a moment where you're like, okay, does this joke still need to be going on? Like, can we talk about something a little more serious, right? And I think that there's a profound thing in like balancing the fun and the serious at the same time, right? Like you can have fun conversations, but also some of the most impactful, actually, I would say most of the most impactful moments of connection that I've experienced and have experienced both in my home and outside of my home is when somebody asks you a meaningful question that challenges you to think beyond what you were thinking about, right? Or to share something that's hard or a place in your life that's maybe tender. And I just loved that as you were talking about that. I thought of then what you were saying of like seeing the unseen, remembering something, because it creates a connection between you and that person that's actually much deeper and richer than, oh, remember that one time we were laughing about X, Y, and Z. Like that is fun, and there's a space and a time for that, but it's so much richer when we are able to connect on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think seeing the unseen is such a heart posture thing that we don't just put on a hat when we show up to church. It is a lifestyle I would live, and a heart posture where you're saying, in this world where people are thriving to perform and present themselves, we're going to be hospitable and go a mile further and say, even before you have to prove yourself, we love you, we see you, because God loves you, God sees you beautiful, and we're going to invite you to the table without you having to put an effort that you're valuable to have a seat at the table.
Wow.
Like, I think that's where people's barriers just break down and say, oh, I am part of this.
Yeah.
You know, all these differences, different backgrounds, different economic status, like different political viewpoints, and all these things that are just endless that will divide us. We're just going to say, no, we already see you and love you. We're not going to let those come in the way of loving you. And I think that is the lifestyle of hospitality. Yeah. Okay. Well, my leading question then would be, what are some misconception regarding hospitality and some of the obstacles that we face, whether that's in our personal lives or in our culture, like that hinders us to practice the life of hospitality? Okay.
I'm going to be a little honest here. So our house has been like under construction for as long as we lived there. Our stairs are like not carpeted. They're there, right? And I'm like, hear my heart in this. Like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but like, we could use that as an excuse of like, hey, our house is not done. It's not presentable. And most of the time it's not. Like, we have 5 kids, so there's always a mess. There's always toys on the ground. There's always something going on. And I had to let go of that a while ago. Like, if we use this as a crutch, we're never going to have anybody over. So it's just like having the mindset of like, we're just inviting people into our lives and into the space that we have. Like, this is what God has for us in this season, and that's fine. Like, they're either going to love us or they're not going to love us, and that's fine, right? Like, so it's just inviting them to life, to come and do life with you. Like, that's real. This is real life. Like, this isn't a show. Like, and sometimes there are times where I love to set the table and make it beautiful, but most of the time that's not going to happen. And that's just the reality of it. So I think like that's a big thing of just like letting those things go. Yeah. And just realizing like the important thing is the table, right? What we're going to discuss, what relationships we're building. And then them seeing like, we're not people that have it put together. We don't have this figured out. We're just walking and trying to figure it out with Jesus, right? And that's, I think, yeah.
That's good.
I think that's one that a lot of people relate to, is like when anybody talks about hospitality, it's like you have to have the perfect home. And like that's just the expectation and
Like the presentable.
yeah, but it's not realistic. And I have a friend, and she told me when she first got married, they were living in this small apartment, and like their bed was on, like they had a twin bed, and like their bed, the twin bed was like on storage containers, like those little like plastic buckets. And whenever they would have someone over, they would still invite them to stay the night, you know? And like we expect like perfection and everything to be pretty, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we went to someone else's house, do we actually care? You know, like we place such high expectations when we ourselves wouldn't even care.
Yeah.
You know, I also think like an obstacle would be like time. I feel like I run from thing to thing, and even though my heart is to like give someone everything, I can't always do that. And I think that is like so hard to deal with, like mentally, and it's just not what I want to do, but it's what ends up happening.
I think to keep going on this same theme,
I think that hospitality does not have to look extravagant, like we're saying, and perfect. While it can, and that's great. At times, like, for example, in my own home, I don't even have a table, but I have a couch, and I have a couch that people can come and sit on, and I can hold conversations with them, and it doesn't have to be pretty and perfect, or like aesthetically pleasing to be able to get a lot out of it. It's about creating a space for people, whether that looks like, sitting at the couch or not. I think that being hospitable is so much more than what it looks like on the outside.
Yeah, and like just like Alyssa said, over the holidays we have Sabbath Sunday at the end of the year, where everyone is encouraged to gather with your friends and families and just rest in receiving the teaching and just rest in the presence of others. And so a lot of people have families, and 3 of us here are single. Let's go it up. So even as single people, we're like, oh, I wasn't invited. We can have all these excuses of like, I'm not invited. Like, people don't want me around, or like all these lies that the enemy tries to get into our headspace. But then I was like, Liz, are you doing something for Sabbath Sunday? Like, should we do something? And then she was like, yeah, do you want to co-host? So like, it takes off the burden that we have to do everything. We have to provide everything. There's so many more opportunities. Even like Krystal here, they're talking about partnering with other couples around town so that we can take off the load of like, I need to do this on my own. Whereas like, no, that's the beauty of church. Like, we were never called to do ministry in isolation or alone, but we were called to be a church and to show up and gather people. And so like, it was so beautiful when we were just like, oh, we're just going to ask people to bring brunch items. You know, the guys brought some bread. Yeah. I don't know what.
I mean, that's what they brought.
Yeah, they brought. The girls, like, we did some scrambled eggs, bacon, fruits, like desserts. It was so fun. And then it was casual. Like, we were just eating around the countertop. Like, there's the sink, and we're just like rinsing off stuff as we eat. And we had really deep conversations. We were like standing around that countertop for like 3 hours. Yeah. Just challenging each other, wrestling through the message that we listened to, or like, how do we rest, you know? And it's just like, we showed up. Literally, our theme was show up with your pajamas. Even like, so I think even setting a low bar for people to just come as they are was really just fun and exciting.
Yeah, I think as you were talking, I was thinking about my husband and I. For the last 2 years, our friends just moved, rip. But we lived a block away from 2 of our best friends. And so the 4 of us just decided that we were going to host Sabbath dinner twice a month, every month together. And we rotated. So we rotated one time at our house, the other time at their house. But the beauty in it is that we also decided that when we were at their house, we were still hosting, right? And so there was this, if you come to one of our Sabbath dinners, which doesn't happen anymore, but my husband and I still do them. But if you came, we like had a fun question up front and then a more serious question like halfway through the meal that would like spark a conversation with everyone around the table, and everyone would be expected to answer. And in that, we like had it structured where the couple that was hosting did the fun question, but the couple that was not hosting, like it wasn't at their house, would do the serious question, which in some ways felt odd because you're like, oh, I'm hosting this space in another person's house. But there's such beauty in that because it took off the burden of, I have to prepare my home, and then I have to prepare all these questions, and I have to, prepare this food and do all these things. And instead it opened up a space where it was like, we're doing this together. Yeah. We're co-laborers together in this, and we're creating an environment that doesn't just feel welcome for our family, but feels welcome for both of these families and then all of the guests that are there in that space. I just think that there's like a profound thing when we partner with one another and don't see ourselves as isolated like I must do everything and accomplish all of this on my own. Because I think that there is a misconception that like you have to do that. And even as a married couple, we got to partner with our married friends in doing that.
Yeah. Oof. I'm just getting so excited. More comments is, okay, the goal is invitation. It is not impression. Like, we're inviting other people to step in capacities that they can.
Yeah.
Like, we're not asking them to, or maybe like, hey, I can bring food. You have the space. Can you host it? Or like the other time we can like swap. It's an invitation for people to step in with their own ownership to like, Lord, I'm going to serve you in ways or capacities that I can show up. And so then again, taking us off of this burden of like, I have to do everything. Like the Lord never asks us to do everything, you know? But to be diligent with the talents that he has given us. And I think it's like, I would love to challenge each one of us to assess what are the talents that the Lord has given me. Like, it could be 1, 3, 5, 10, but we have plenty. We're, first of all, in America, we're surrounded with resources. We're surrounded with options. Like, we should not take that lightly. So I think the goal and the motivation should be invitational. I want to partner with you instead of like, I want to serve you to the fullest, as in like somebody's only on the receiving end and somebody's only on the serving end. You know, this like service industry mindset is not what we're looking for. We're looking for an invitational partnership.
Yeah, that's good. As we are talking about all of this, I'm just like struck by the fact that hospitality is so much deeper and richer, and it is so much more than this idea of hosting in our own culture, right? So I think that there's been a lot of misconceptions that we've talked about, but how do you think social media and specifically modern culture have shaped our understanding of what it means to be hospitable? Who's gonna go?
I would say hospitality is almost unheard of. Like, everyone has their own life, and it's almost like people are too scared to bring people in. Yeah. So, just lost my train of thought. Yeah, I would say it's unheard of, and it's almost like if you're going to be a hospitable person, you have to, A, be perfect, you have to be generous, and you have to be kind. And if you aren't all three of those, like, you shouldn't, like, host. You shouldn't be hospitable. It's like the world creates this perfect image that you have to fit into. And if you don't, like, you're not part of the club. Like, I feel like the expectation is just unrealistic.
I think, or that like you have to have money, or it has to look expensive, be expensive, because I could make that an excuse easily. Like, I don't have the money for this, but I do have the space, and I do have the time, and I do have the heart for it, and that's what matters. Because like we talked about earlier, is like things you wouldn't even notice when you're a guest in someone else's home, but you notice it. Of like, well, I'm just creating a space where people can just come. It doesn't have to look and be like the most expensive food and the aesthetic that you want to post on social media, maybe. It just is the space that you're making.
Yeah, I think it goes beyond what the eye sees. And it's such a heart posture. I often, for those of you that know me, I always refer to the Acts Church because they embodied hospitality. Like, they were of one accord. They just all came together and did life together. That means they cooked meals together. They cleaned together. They did life together. And Like for me, that's like such a desire for me, where I'm like, I want people just to walk in and come in whenever they want. Like our house, we always say like our house is always open. Like our house is your house. Like it's not even our own, right? Like we're just stewarding this space, and ultimately like everything that we have is his. So like how are we stewarding that, right? Like are we welcoming? And I was wrecked by today's message. Wrecked. Yeah. Yeah, totally wrecked. Because there are areas where I'm like, I have been ignoring this area, right? So yeah, just it's open to the church, but also like my husband and I were always like, we hope that whoever sits here will duplicate this and take it. Like it's not meant to just stay here, right? Like that's always been our prayer. Like we do Sabbaths also, and we're just hoping that just like ignites a fire for everybody. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. Our kids are usually running around like crazy, you know, like this is real, and this is what we want to invite people into. Yeah, like I think it was said like Jesus didn't have a home, and he was like, hey, I'm going to your house today, like go ahead and prepare that. Like all we're doing is setting up the space, and Jesus will show up. Like he'll do the rest. Yeah.
I have one thing, sorry. To go off that too, I think that you can also be a hospitable guest.
That's good.
You don't have to host to be hospitable. Like you were talking about the church of they're cooking together, they're cleaning together. So I could go to someone else's home and I can help clean up the dinner that they prepared, or something else, or like how Jesus, he didn't have a home. He was the guest in other people's homes, yet he was like the definition of hospitable. So I think it can also look like being a good guest and seeing your hosts too, making them feel seen just as they are to you. I think that's huge too.
No, you're good.
I think one of the biggest challenges for most people in the West, specifically in America, is to accept help in your own home. And we host a lot. We host a ton. And there's a dear, sweet friend of mine who goes to this community. She is always at our house. And it took me so long to be like, yeah, you can help me with my dishes. And I think one of the most hospitable things you can do as somebody who's trying to live out a life of hospitality is allow other people to offer you hospitality in your own home. And to say, yes, I prepared this meal and for whatever, or I didn't prepare this meal. I ordered takeout. But I will allow you to also serve with me. And to help clean up the table and to vacuum or to sweep or to do whatever it is, right? I think the same goes for like when you have, like I have a lot of friends who are having babies, right? Like how can you be a hospitable guest to those people, right? In those spaces that just really feels kind. And I think that one of the biggest things you can do as you're learning to live a life of hospitality is to allow other people to serve you in your home.
Drop the mic.
No, not really.
Yeah. Wow, that is such an eye-opening perspective. Like, yes, we do it, but to put a language to it, like to call it out like that, it's just so beautiful. And when we do hospitality events here, our team doesn't just take out food, present it on the table. Like we literally go from crawling into our tiny storage room, pulling out everything we have, bring them all the way downstairs. Like guys are on the scissor lift, like hanging stuff from who knows how tall that ceiling is. And I'm holding on to that safety, whatever. I'm like, bring me back down. Like, I can't even do it. So like people are just stepping in ways that there is a need. And so often we like plan this picture perfect dinner with like candlelights and flowers, all the thing. But the beauty of doing life together is being interrupted. Things don't happen as you plan. Like things fall apart, but there should be so much grace and understanding to invite other people to like, oh my gosh, or I don't know, we dropped a box of cupcakes, whatever, and we're like, it's totally fine. Yeah, we if people have to split the cupcake to share, yeah, 10-second rule. Okay, yeah, not fine. Yeah, we don't do that, by the way. But yeah, to be interrupted, I think that's such a humbling like thing for us to let the Lord just move in ways that He wills, like in our life. And yeah.
Well, we are at time. We could continue this conversation for probably a few hours. But Gracie, Alyssa, Krystal, thank you so much for all the ways you serve this house, and in a lot of ways that are not very visible. That you show up early on a Saturday morning to create a space for people to walk into that feel welcomed, that the unseen can feel welcomed here. So we are so grateful for you and for Gloria for leading this hospitality ministry. It is a powerful expression of God's love to this house and to this community. And so we are so grateful for you, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us and to giggle with us about all the things. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Made Live podcast. Don't forget to listen to the Table of God series, or the Unreasonable Hospitality. That's what it is. Whoops. LOL. The Unreasonable Hospitality series that we're currently in. We can't wait to continue this conversation, and we'll see you again next week.